What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Alfalfa podcast. We are live on YouTube like we are every Wednesday at 5 p.m. PST, although not as usual. We're down a few co-hosts. The second co-host will be revealed shortly. What's up to everyone in the chat? I see you guys piling in. What's up? Thanks for joining us. Like the video if you haven't already, and check out all the links at alfalfapod.com. The Discord link is in there. Go ahead and hop on in. You can help out the pod a few different ways. You can share this episode with a friend if you like it. You can tweet this episode, and you can check out the on-chain collectibles. Pods.media/alfalfa is the link. And to our second co-host. Hello, sir. How are you, Steven?
Hi.
Can you tell us what we're drinking today? We got seems like a whiskey only.
Yeah, we're drinking Frey Ranch.
It's got grassy notes to it, I'm told.
So I'm told as well.
Wait, where is yours? Oh, you drank
it.
You drank your first glass already.
No, I'm drinking Mexican beer.
Okay. Cheers to you.
Keeps me coming back.
All right, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, zbiotics.com/alfalfa. You can get 15% off if you use the code alfalfa. You guys already know about it, but Z-Biotics is that drink you take before drinking, and for the cost of one drink, it can make sure all those other drinks don't feel so nasty the next morning. So it's a pre-alcohol probiotic drink, the world's first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists to tackle the rough mornings after drinking. When you drink, your body creates this toxin called acetaldehyde, and it's this toxin not being dehydrated that makes you feel like crap in the morning. So Z-Biotics probiotic takes care of that for you. My fiance was on her bachelorette party and saved the day. They were on a boat for 4 hours and then kept going off in the yonders of San Diego bars for another 6 hours afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
It was quite impressive. I didn't see him going that long, but
there's no better way to be a hero.
Yeah. So in the morning though, just like brand new, she was good to go. She's a believer now. She finally took the leap, and she immediately asked me to order more.
I forgot mine last week, and I did not have a good Thursday morning. Sadly.
Well, there it is, guys. There's your testimonial. So go to zbiotics.com/alfalfa. Use the code alfalfa at checkout. What else we got? We got Magic Spoon. Go to magicspoon.com/alfalfa. And I think you get $5 off the variety pack, which includes the cocoa flavor, the fruity flavor, the peanut butter flavor, and the frosted. I like the frosted the most. It's the one that seems like easier to eat out of the bowl. Oh, you have it there? Oh, wow. Well placed. Good product placement, sir. So all of them have 0 grams of total sugars, 4 grams of net carbs, and about 13 to 14 grams of protein. I think the calories range from 140 to 170 calories per serving if you can stick to only one. They're keto-friendly, gluten-friendly, grain-free, and soy-free. So go to magicspoon.com/alfalfa. Use the code alfalfa at checkout. Yeah, and if you or the kids don't like it, they'll give you your money back. No questions asked. Thanks for supporting the pod. You too, Magic Spoon and Z-Biotics. Friends of the team. So, Steven.
You think it's really no questions asked?
I mean...
what if you're committing, like, credit card fraud?
Ooh.
Will they ask,
I know all about
this.
Are
you committing credit card fraud? Yeah. And you're like, hey. Said no questions.
Well, the funny thing is that people who commit credit card fraud do not contact customer service. They just commit credit card fraud.
It's a fair point.
And they go to the bank and be like, hey, give me my money back. These guys frauded me. We deal with all those kind of fraudsters all the time. We have many attacks every week on us of people with stolen credit cards. Like thousands of transactions a minute will come in, and they'll all get declined, and they're trying to see which ones get approved, which ones are active, and then they, I assume, resell the active cards on the black market. So, yeah, we deal with all those scumsters all the time, and we like enact something to prevent them. Then they like enhance their methods. It's a whole.
Yeah, people don't realize how shady it is out there with the credit card fraud until you run some sort of product on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Also, all those like text spammers. That's a whole nother group.
Oh God, dude, mine's gotten so bad lately. It's going to another level now with the calls and the
My phone is unusable. Like if you look at my phone right now, it's basically a bunch of red numbers of missed calls. It's unusable as a phone anymore.
I used to use that RoboKiller app I talked about.
Does it work?
It works amazingly, but they jacked their price up from $2 a month to like $130 a year.
Okay.
So now I'm just like, I'll just
You're in, obviously.
no,
No, you're out?
no. I
What?
way too poor for that now.
I guess, yeah, you can always just, block all the unknown callers. I do that. I have a constant do not disturb, and all the people like I talk to frequently are on the favorites list, and they get let in.
I bet you they don't have this problem in Singapore.
Singapore,
Probably
no,
just put you to death.
Yeah, yeah, you
One spam text.
yeah, it's the same penalty for spitting gum on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Singapore today.
I know. I was doing some foreshadowing.
Okay. All right. Well, we're both multitasking, so I shouldn't complain about multitasking today.
Mm-hmm.
But what are we talking about first? You
Um,
got any alfalfa to share?
yeah, I had some alfalfa for you.
Okay.
It's more of like interesting thing was brought to my brain this week. I was chatting with a friend who listens to the pod, and he was telling me all about this guy Jason Lowry, who's sort of like he's basically a Bitcoin guy.
For
He
sure.
does a pod with
Yes.
Breedlove, but he has this theory called soft war theory, which I think is a play on software.
Okay.
I think the idea is that like war is now fought in this non-kinetic way and will be fought in this sort of like increasingly non-kinetic way. And I kind of looked into it a little bit because it sounded pretty interesting, and it's a really fun rabbit hole to go down. The interesting thing I think is like how Bitcoin ties into it.
Right. That's a core to his thesis.
Yes. And I think one of the most interesting things that he kind of puts out there is this idea that we should rebrand Bitcoin.
Oh, I haven't read that part.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be branded as money, because then you've got like the Fed and like Elizabeth Warren wants to come and regulate it. He said we need to rebrand it as a national defense tool.
So he has a military background, I know.
Yes.
And he's kind of like a hard follow on Twitter because he's quite cryptic now.
Mhm.
Because I think what he's alluding to is that he has contacts in the Department of Defense.
And they're telling him like,
Yeah, like, hey, don't really talk about this too much. Also alluding to the fact that maybe they're like taking on to this theory long term. That is the Department of Defense. So I don't know. Why don't you keep explaining a little more?
yeah, so like in the traditional world, since the dawn of time, basically, maybe I guess since the dawn of empires, there's been the process of power projection that countries use, and power has pretty much always been projected via like weapons of war. It may have been like wooden ships at one point, and now we have nukes and aircraft carriers and naval bases and that sort of thing. But like these traditional forms of power projection don't really apply as much in the digital world. Like one of the interesting things he talks about is this idea that cybersecurity is like basically a meme. Like every single power has basically hacked everybody on planet Earth, right? And it's like this difficult problem because you have to simultaneously secure like 1 million backdoors into all of your stuff, and you only have to get exploited in like one specific location. So it's like virtually impossible to sort of like stay ahead of the curve. And everybody's kind of hacking everybody in the same way that like you see like Hezbollah and Israel just exchange like a rocket here or there, although it's getting a little crazy now. But the main way this is kind of kept in check is sort of just through like tit for tat game theory, where like, oh, you hack me, like I hack one of your companies or whatever, right? So there's like a variety of ways that he says that Bitcoin sort of fits into this paradigm. The first is that like, which people will be able to kind of most easily wrap their head around, is that Bitcoin is a tool for power projection, and that it sort of makes you immune to money printing, right? this is especially true if you are not the United States, right?
Right.
Like if you are even an ally who sort of is reliant on the dollar, like we can kind of control anybody on Earth who uses the dollar by like debasing the dollar, because, you know, we get to kind of do whatever we want with the dollar, and they have to kind of like, we basically can print it to pay our own debt,
Right.
but kind of fucks everybody else. So Bitcoin is a hedge against that sort of U.S. power.
He's talking
projection.
about those other nations. For them, it's a hedge.
For them. But because, I mean, for all these things, like, there's a sort of like game theory that's going to play out just specifically in the realm of like national security, national defense, right? So even though this doesn't affect the U.S., because it's sort of like a GTO thing for other countries to do, especially sort of like the BRICS nations, right? They're going to accumulate it, which means that we have to accumulate it because they're going to accumulate it, and then we kind of have to do it as like a countermeasure.
Right. Which is why the America's in a catch-22 with this whole proposal, because as soon as, let's say, I think the easiest part of his like theory for the U.S. to subscribe to is to, I don't know, make it part of its foreign asset reserves, right? Start accumulating Bitcoin. But as soon as that happens, it accelerates the game theory. And as soon as the U.S. adopts it as like a foreign asset or, you know, foreign reserve, it makes it more likely that those other countries will, that all countries would start.
So what's interesting is like everybody kept talking about how, you know, oh, he's doing a strategic reserve. It's a strategic reserve, a strategic reserve. But I think the language he actually used was strategic, like stockpile.
Yeah.
And like a stockpile. So apparently Lowry has been advising Trump. I heard, maybe not directly, but through kind of like the grapevine, and that was like one of his words. Like, and you know, you think of stockpile, you think of like munitions.
Right.
So the idea isn't that like we're hoarding it to like back the dollar or something. And people kind of like poo-pooed that as like a dumb, ridiculous idea, and maybe it is. But once you think of it as like a munition stockpile of sorts, like a digital munition stockpile, then the phrase sort of like, you know, in what he wants to do takes on like a whole different meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time thinking, let's say that the U.S. didn't make it a part of their reserves. In all these countries, let's say China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, you know, you can kind of go down the list there. Like, in order for this, I think his theory overstates the importance of Bitcoin. Obviously, we're talking about now, you could like project in the future, but in order for it to have like global strategic importance, it would have to be used part of global trade, I think, and not just between like governments, but between private actors. It would have to have deep liquidity. You know, we're talking like massive sums of money. It's kind of a drop in the bucket at $1 trillion in asset value. And then also, like, you know, if you're going to say trade Bitcoin for oil, like it has to have no currency risk, right? The volatility risk is too much. So I don't know if I'm missing something in what he's forecasting in the future, but is it really that much of strategic importance if, you know,
I mean,
you can never really use it?
a hole in a bunch of stuff you're saying. Right?
Okay.
So for one, like, I don't think volatility matters that much. Like, if you're talking about like this is like a wartime asset,
No, but it's not.
vol
It's
is
not.
like sort of
No,
out
it's
the
not. It's
window.
not a wartime asset because he's saying we're in a world where kinetic action is, you know,
It's a wartime asset in the same way that nuclear weapons is a wartime asset. So like we've used the analogy of like Bitcoin as like a gun on this podcast, although we've used it in like a different domain specifically. Like
holds us in check.
we've talked about it, yeah, as a gun that holds us in check via the money printer. But it to like foreign actors is a gun that holds the U.S. in check, you know, from like a foreign economic perspective, right? The ability to weaponize the dollar is like an extremely important like thing that we can do,
Yeah.
right? Like that is a very powerful tool
Arguably, we overuse
in
it.
the imperial tool chest, and like, yeah, I would argue that we've probably crossed the Rubicon and taken a step too far in that. So to be able to take that away from us, even if it's not done in like practical use in the everyday world, but that it can be used in a sort of break glass in case of emergency, like it already has extreme importance. And I think people have been, you know, doing oil trades for Bitcoin, and it's very possible to do these things.
Yeah, it's possible in like the test case, right? But like if you actually had to transact all of your oil in Bitcoin, I don't think it's like really feasible.
Why?
Because the liquidity is not deep enough and the currency risk.
You don't need liquidity to
Absolutely.
buy oil.
Absolutely.
What? No, you already have. No, here's the thing: if what if Lowry's saying is true, we're not just gonna be like, oh, Bitcoin with like $1 trillion in liquidity, go. Like, there's going to be a realization that this is the game theory and how it's going to play out. Everybody's going to start accumulating it. Bitcoin's going to go from like a $1 trillion asset to like a $10 trillion asset to like a $50 trillion asset, and then like there's liquidity everywhere, right? And then through this process, everybody has already accumulated their stockpile of Bitcoin, and they don't necessarily have to go on the market and like buy it, right? It's not like Iran is going to go on Coinbase and buy the Bitcoin anyway, right? Like, they're going to use the Bitcoin from their strategic reserve and transfer it to Russia or Saudi Arabia in exchange for oil. There's not going to be like some on-exchange transaction going on.
All right. An argument against this, not mine, but is that all these central banks have gold already. It's a $16 trillion asset already. So like, why isn't this the gun that they can?
Because gold has like a few like huge problems over Bitcoin. Like, for one, it's a non-digital asset, right? And in order to make it a digital asset, you have to do some things that are objectively not decentralized. Like, maybe you put it in a vault, but then like there's gonna have to be some centralized authority on the internet that is like has your login or something. I don't know. Like, and it's just not the same, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a huge
Can we talk about the centralized decentralized part of this? Because you could argue that if the way Jason Lowry's thesis plays out, and all of these central banks start buying or mining and hoarding Bitcoin, I think you can make an argument that it could actually lead to some kind of kinetic action, right? So the argument is that Bitcoin is decentralized and it can't be attacked as easily as anything else. But the fact is that there's significant mining rigs in the U.S., in China, Kazakhstan, I think, is up there. But you basically pick off the top 10 companies that professionally mine Bitcoin, and whether through covert action or just launching a missile at this thing, you could significantly centralize it in one day if you wanted to. So if this plays out and Bitcoin becomes this like super important strategic military asset, does it kind of like increase the probability of a kinetic action?
Everything you're like, as an investor, right? I want number go up, right? Maybe that's a bit of a.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah, we're on the same page here.
But if what you're talking about is happening, like the price is like $5 million, right, per coin already.
And then we talk about the 80% one day nuke back down to a million.
We're talking about other problems. I don't think that causes a nuke, because I think the stuff you're describing causes scarcity. Like, the whole point of like this theory is that like there's this sort of scarcity to the asset, right? Which is what makes it so valuable. In the same way that, countries go to war over other scarce finite assets like minerals, like land, like ports, like stuff like this, they will also go to war over Bitcoin, but like probably not in a kinetic way, because there's not really a need to. That's kind of like
they don't have to.
It's kind of the point of this, is that like you can not only buy it on the open market, and once you buy it on the open market, it's just yours, unless you've got some really bad OPSEC and you keep all of your Iranian Bitcoin on like a Trezor.
I can't wait for the first like central bank to just lose their seed phrase and just like evaporate money.
Oh man.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I mean, I guess, do you like this theory? Is this like a theory that helps you as an investor, or do you like it?
I love this theory. I mean, one of the most interesting parts of this theory is that like we're still talking about Bitcoin as like an economic asset in this theory, right? We've already said like the interesting part about the theory is that it rebrands Bitcoin from like a money to a strategic defense asset. which sort of puts it out of the realm of like, like the guys with the shades and the suits come over to Elizabeth Warren and they're like, yeah, we'll take it from here. And then there's nothing she can do anymore, right? But one of the most interesting things about it is the idea that, like, we talked about cybersecurity and how everybody's just hacking each other and there's like nothing we can do about it, whatever. Lowry posits that Bitcoin could derive a tremendous amount of value because, like, the military and other, military-like organizations can be like executing specific types of like software on top of the Bitcoin network, like software that is sort of like more slow-moving, but nonetheless, like, it would sort of make it immune from.
I've heard this point, and I kind of think that its transparent nature may kind of disrupt all that. Like,
Do you know why that's wrong?
Well, let me finish the sentence. I know you're reading my mind, but like the fact that like you would have strategic infrastructure or even covert apps on blockchain network, like, why would you want that all transparent? You don't think that would prevent the DoD from adopting this idea?
Okay. I don't know if this. I'm assuming this is just you, just like you're just prompting a question.
Yeah, I'm prompting you. I'm feeding you. I'm alley-ooping you.
I know ChatGPT has already said your IQ is very high. More foreshadowing. But yeah, like, if you are, a lot of people are like, why would you write your software code on the Bitcoin network, right? Fair question though. The idea is that you would obviously just you would do encrypted stuff on Bitcoin. Like, you would just put a hash on the Bitcoin network, or you would build like or execute on some sort of like Bitcoin L2, and all the sensitive stuff would be like done off chain,
extracted away.
So yeah, then like kind of like the stuff that you need is kind of hashed on chain. You can do Merkle trees, which is maybe a little down the rabbit hole. If we're being trying to be casual here, but there's a lot of ways to basically use what is a publicly visible ledger in a way that is still secretive and covert through the glories of encryption. Think
this would be better for an ETH L1 play?
No, because like we've talked about this before, like Bitcoin is wartime money and ETH is peacetime money, and I really think that is never been more true. I
like to see the Bitcoiner come back out of you. It's come back lately. Are you sure you're not tilting because of the ratio? Feels like this is coming at like a opportune time that the ETH BTC ratio is bottoming, or hopefully bottoming.
I don't think it's bottoming. I think that I was very smart in like December, and I should just listen to December me, which unfortunately I can't do. But yeah, I mean, there's like a variety of reasons I think that ETH is underperforming and probably continues to underperform. One of the good things about ETH is that it is sort of like a bet on human ingenuity and optimism, and the benefits of more centralized coordination. But one of the downsides of ETH is that it is a bet on humanity and optimism and the benefits of centralized coordination. And like we're sort of seeing that play out right now.
Man, I wish David was coming early. His flight was arriving earlier.
He's going to listen to this. And
yeah. David Hoffman, co-host of Bankless, is arriving in an hour and a half. Just too late to join this pod, but yeah, we'll get his retort over dinner. Yeah. I do think that it feels like kind of time for us to see like a central bank start to acquire some. It feels like it might already be happening. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but the U.S. financial system is kind of like embracing it. We saw derivatives options got approved. Yeah. This is looking like, hey, this thing is getting de-risked. It will be like a global debasement hedge. Seems smart to have it in not only your personal but your government's like reserve. I wouldn't be surprised if one is acquiring already.
I mean,
And
the
I wouldn't
the Bitcoin chart to me does look like a beach ball underwater, right? It's
you
sort
think
of
a government just twapping the hell out of it?
like there's some funny business going on for sure because the gold chart is very similar. Did we talk about this on last week's pod?
Yeah,
I
you
feel like
brought
I'm
it up.
repeating myself.
Yeah.
I won't bring it up again. But like I feel I think I'm like underexposed to Bitcoin, honestly. I think most people in our Discord probably are. I think I was I think like you know I didn't I hadn't considered the full picture. There are things that I now know that I hadn't thought about previously, and a lot of the stuff that makes me bullish on ETH is speculative, whereas like the things that make me bullish on Bitcoin are these like things that I know are going to happen with 1,000% certainty, which is that like politicians are going to print money and foreign actors are going to be forever embroiled in like international conflict.
Oh, did you see Lynn Alden? I guess paid for a study to look at the correlation of M2 money supply and several assets. She looked at Bitcoin, S&P 500, and apparently Bitcoin has the highest correlation to M2. So yeah, if you think politicians across the globe are going to print more money, money's going to get debased. Her study proved that over the long time horizon, over like if you're talking over 1 or 2 years, it's one of the best assets to own. The second asset is S&P 500. It looked like from the charts she published. She said that in the study they noticed that like anything under like 6 months or even 12 months, it's not very correlated. But if you look over a couple years, ideally like 4 years, highly correlated, both in up and down scenarios. So yeah, I mean, I kind of think about that a lot. That one of the things I firmly believe to be true is that the total money supply will drastically increase over the next couple decades.
Yes.
Yeah, and
It's a given.
I've been rebuying Bitcoin in the SEP IRA I have. I traded 80% of my Bitcoin for ETH at like 0.048, which is now down. What is that? Down 20%. Yeah. For a while there, for a quick minute, it looked like a fun trade.
Bro, I swapped so much Bitcoin after the surprise ETF approval. That was, I was going to say one of my worst trades ever. It might be my worst trade ever. Candidly.
Well, hey,
Not good.
at the very least, you'll still be one of those people in those memes who was like, wow, he has a whole Bitcoin, in like 20 years.
I'm wondering if I should just sell all my coin for Bitcoin. I wonder if I have too many proxy trades,
Coinbase does trade pretty close to Bitcoin. There's a little earnings surprise here and there, but it's not too far off.
I still like have too little Bitcoin and too much like regulatory speculation. And like to be clear, like I think if Trump wins, and I do think he will win, I do think the polls are just systematically like undersampling his voters. Like I really feel like that's true.
Okay.
I can't prove it, but I know it's true.
Sounds like hopium, but yeah, okay.
It's also hopium.
Yeah.
Two things can be true at the same time. So I do think like stuff like ETH is going to do well. I mean, the question is like, is ETH going to do better than Solana? Is it going to do better than like a Sui or some other kind of more shitcoin type stuff? Like there's going to be like a shitcoin renaissance, right? And like people might be like, well, why am I going to hold ETH when I going to hold these glorious shitcoins? Which is like just so many things like nipping at the heels of this asset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like the fact that the S&P 500 is just gloriously sending it, but it kind of come back to this like coma portfolio, which is like Bitcoin, ETH. You can pick your third coin of choice. Maybe it's Solana
Bitcoin,
and
ETH,
coin.
But like that's not the question. The question is like, what percentage weighting do you hold these assets?
50-50 or
No.
I definitely don't hold 50-50.
No, I'm pretty like what would you hold in a normal crypto portfolio anyway? Like 50% Bitcoin?
I certainly don't.
Right, but that's probably like what you should do, right? And some would say should be more, right?
Oof.
I'm sure some would say, what is Bitcoin dominance now? Is it over 50%?
Yes, it's just under 60.
Yeah, so like let's say that you do just Bitcoin dominance weighted. You're at 60%, right? If I'm right and Trump loses, the other 40% of crypto is just dog shit.
Torched.
Right? It's torched, right?
Yeah.
So let's assign a 50% probability of that. Does that mean you should hold 80% Bitcoin? Probably does. Probably you should hold 80%. So then if you market weight like ETH, you're probably at like 2 or 3% ETH or something. Wait, it's not that bad. It's probably like 5%.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
7%. It's low. It's way lower than everybody else is doing right now. Like everybody in the Discord's altcoin exposure is for sure like way above like 20%.
You mean my
I don't even have to take a poll.
out of the
Like, I
money
know that's
leaps
true.
on coin are too much?
I think it's too much. Like coin is a regulatory play. It's a regulatory exposure. It's exposure to like I don't think coin cares that much about Bitcoin. Like it's like a play on like is the public going to come in and just like YOLO on shit coins basically, and are like is like Nike going to build an L2? But like that shit is so far away. I think it's like years away.
Bro, we're gonna be fine either way. We're gonna be fine either way.
Eventually.
No, if Kamala gets elected, it'll be a buy the news event, and just give it time for her to spend. Give it time.
Buy the news. If
Buy
Kamala
the
gets-
news. Yeah.
Buy what on the news?
Buy Bitcoin, buy ETH on the news.
Wait, I don't understand. Why am I buying ETH on a Kamala?
I said
victory?
Bitcoin first. Don't nitpick my argument.
No, why am I buying ETH?
Okay, fine. Buy Bitcoin. Only Bitcoin, but you still buy it on the news.
But you're just proving my point, like which is that you should be like wildly overweight Bitcoin because it's the only one that does well no matter what happens. And if you look at the market cap weighted, kind of like passive crypto portfolio, to go into a coma crypto portfolio.
I admire your loosely held opinions, but I also don't know which one to trust.
Don't trust my opinion, trust my reasoning.
Okay.
You know? My reasoning has actually been good most of the time. It's just like my own following of my own reasoning is not good.
Yeah, I feel like you should let one of us control your portfolio and like you just
If I just had somebody invest solely on the basis of what I say on this podcast, like I'd be up so much more money. It'd be a joke, honestly. It'd be a freaking joke. I'd be tired.
all right, let's move on. Let's move on. Chats should we get the chat involved? Let's see. Vibe says if you get kidnapped with gold, you're instantly dead and gold gets stolen. But with BTC, if you get kidnapped with the hardware wallet, they're incentivized to keep you alive. Something to think about. All right, I like that. Good survival technique. Let's see. Ali says ETH is oversold, undervalued asset compared to Bitcoin. It's best to invest in an asset that is yet to be discovered versus an asset that is well known. Kind of in Ali's point. I like buying it when things trodden down and shattered on. Max says gold survives nuke. BTC does not.
Okay.
Oversimplification, but food for thought.
Hard disagree.
Okay, go on.
Hard disagree. You can already run the whole Bitcoin network, I think, with like pens and paper, as far as I know. Like they've already got the nuclear. They already thought of the nuclear apocalypse thing. Like that's like I think it's already apocalypse proof.
Also, doesn't the difficulty adjust and like the game theory be like for someone to set up the first mining rig is they're highly incentivized to restart that bad boy up.
It's cockroaches and Bitcoin. That's like the only thing that survives.
All right. Chat, keep them coming.
Ali's got ETH is oversold, undervalued compared to Bitcoin.
I just read that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you. I don't
It's
remember
only us. You have to pay attention if
I
it's
didn't-
only
I,
us.
Like, literally don't remember you saying that. Oversold, like on but what metric? Like I don't. You know, whenever people say something is oversold in crypto, I'm always like.
For now.
I've seen a lot of
So
a lot of
far.
oversold charts go like another negative like 98%.
All right, well,
I
I'm
don't think ETH will do that, but like
All right. Well, I'm glad I have 30% of your attention.
that
All
might
right.
be high.
All right. You want to talk about Mr. Shapiro signing artillery shells?
Oh yeah.
What do you got? You got
Is
something to
that-
put
is
up on
that
the
my
screen?
cue to put this on the screen?
I think so.
Can I make the tweet bigger, or do we just do this?
Armon, help. Okay.
Can
You're
I full
playing
screen
audio
this?
now.
Not really.
I don't know. Okay. Anyway, what you're looking at is
Anyway. Governor Shapiro is signing bombs
yeah. And Zelensky's right next to him.
right next to him. He's like a proud dad. Like,
Right. So I think he got part of this right, which is, you know, he's creating jobs for his state. Right? That part, good.
oh god.
Signing artillery shells that will eventually kill Russian soldiers. I don't know. That seems at best a faux pas, and at worst like just a really bad like national security decision.
This reminds me of like when you used to be on Facebook back in the day, and like your uncle would like post like a meme, and you'd be like, "It's not gonna land well. Nobody thinks like that anymore." Like that. Like that's what I felt like watching this. I was just immediately in my head like, cringe.
Why? Why'd you do that? You didn't need to do that. You just needed to like tour him, and yeah, if you were caught on video touring him through the artillery shell factory, that's fine. That's fine. But you know, you signing shells, it's a bit much. And I don't think it's going to land well in the future.
It's just weird. You're just like, yeah, some
Like, what did he write?
19-year-old Russian dude's gonna die with the shell. Woo! And just people are like, clapping. It's like even if you're like anti-Russia, like the people who are gonna get blown up by this thing they're for the most part like innocent. Like they're kids.
And also,
right?
like the whole unsaid argument about this thing is that it's we're just supporting this country that's trying to have a free democracy, free of authoritarianism, free. They want to be sovereign. We're just supporting that, and this just like wipes away that whole, drapery scam thing that like this is a proxy war. And like when you see a governor signing artillery shells, no, it's a direct war, right? And I think we fail to grasp that we're directly at war with Russia, and this just kind of like, I don't know, moves the veil, and like, oh, our politicians are signing shells. They're going to kill Russians, and I feel like although we are directly at war, I feel like it'd been nice to keep that veil up a little longer.
I have like so many thoughts that come to mind and different directions to take this. Trying to think where to even begin. Actually,
You should begin by pouring yourself another whiskey.
well, I have a beer.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
gonna drink the current course of action. Drink Modelo, pivot to whiskey, pivot back to this rogue Modelo at the end.
Okay.
Okay, how do you feel about that?
I feel good. Although I feel like this is like your investment strategy. Maybe someone else should control
Yeah.
your actual
anyway.
destiny.
I mean, you're a big foreign policy buff.
I like it.
You are the biggest foreign policy buff that I know. I'm not saying you're a young Mearsheimer or anything, but
Yeah, I'm not necessarily good at it.
Do you feel the same way about the war today that you did, like when it started, or like a month after it started?
Yes,
How did you feel like a month after?
it's our fault.
It's our fault. Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like a popular take, but like, I don't know. And this is like is an easy argument you could poke holes in, right? But let's say Russia was going to create a military alliance, and they started with someone like as benign as like Venezuela. It's like, okay, that's weird, but like non-threatening. And then they like moved a little north, and they like, roped in Colombia, and you're like, oh, whoa, they're moving north. Okay, military alliance on our border, and you start moving into like Cuba and other regions. Like, we would act the same way. In fact, we did. Like, as soon as Russia started sending Cuba missiles, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis where JFK had his hand on the nuke button. And so, similarly, we've created this military alliance to a country that really doesn't pose that big of a military threat. Yes, they have nukes, but, as like a competitor on the global scale, they're kind of a one-trick pony. They have oil, they have gas, cool, but nothing else as far as a competitor. So why would you antagonize them by like just pushing on their borders when through public statements and your intelligence that Putin views this as like a like surviving issue for Russia. To have the West on its borders with military assets doesn't, he views it as existential.
All right, fair point. But what would you say to somebody out there who may or may not have the Twitter handle at Jason that we have a duty to defend our democratic allies who are just attacked by this like ruthless dictator who wants to take over all of Europe? Do you just want to give him? You just want to give him Ukraine? Is that like the message we're sending? We just take Ukraine? Just take it?
Yeah, he can have it actually, because I don't think it actually like no one has made the argument to the common American citizen what strategic importance to the daily lives of Americans that defending Ukraine has. And every speech that Biden has made, he's talked about defending democracy, defending Western civilization, but
everything is defending democracy.
Right. But no one has ever like brought it home to my household P&L, and I feel like that argument is lacking. But the one person who I've heard who has made the best argument for it, not that I agree with it, but Stanley Druckenmiller makes the argument that, okay, it's going to cost you X number of dollars to defend Ukraine now. If Russia took Ukraine, it would cost you 10x more dollars because the game theory plays out, okay, if he takes Ukraine, he might take Poland, I don't know, something else. And if it does, in fact, get in issues with a NATO country, then it costs you 10x more dollars. And so his argument is that it's cheaper to defend Ukraine now than it is to just wait and defend, people in our military alliance. And I mean, I spoke loosely about like defending Ukraine, but like we could have sent to the soft war, tactics instead of supporting them militarily, and that would have been just fine.
It's funny. I noticed Druck's argument entirely involves money and doesn't include the probability of like nuclear annihilation.
Yeah.
Like, is that in the calculus?
Oh man, we had.
Well, I don't know. It's gonna be pretty expensive. Like, yeah, but can you really put a price on the continuation of humanity?
Man, we had a really good nuclear discussion at Cigars after our last podcast.
Oh, dude, I was listening to Kofinas, and apparently have you heard there's a book called like Nuclear War, a Scenario?
No. Oh, is this like it plays it out where the world ends?
Yeah, apparently we have to read this. It's just like a very brief thing where it just plays out what happens. And apparently if you read this, you'll immediately be like, is there like an N pill? Is there a nuke pill?
Yeah, I mean, like, I like to think of it as like your investment portfolio, and it's like, hey, if you take this part of your portfolio and invest 1% in it, it would drastically increase your chances of wiping out your entire portfolio. Like selling, let's call it selling naked call options, right? Like 99% of the time you're going to be fine, but 1% of that chance, you could lose everything, even though it's only 1% of your portfolio. And so, we like to throw around expected value calculation.
This war is so much worse. It's like if I went up to somebody and I gave him like one of those like meme boxes with like 2 buttons, and I was like, all right, here's the deal. If you push one button, you guaranteed to lose $1, right? And then if you push the other button, there's a 1 in 100 chance that all of humanity dies, right? And then you're just like, but there's also a third button where you don't lose $1. And you'd be like, wait, why am I pushing these other 2 buttons? You're just like, don't ask. Like, you're just like, it doesn't make any sense. You're basically, you're taking money. We just sent him another $8 billion today. I saw. It's casual.
But like the $8 billion's fine. But like adding, I think it was Sweden and Finland into NATO, which Finland also borders Russia. Like that is so much more significant. And it's like, why? Why do you need to do this? Like, how many decades has it been since Russia actually presented this like, military threat, other than, just what he talks about. And I think the biggest misconception is that Putin is this deranged, crazy man. Like, you never know what he's going to do. But I actually think he's a pretty rational actor. Like, on a chessboard, he you know, granted, he has some beliefs that we may not believe with, but, you know, he acts fairly rationally.
Of course he's a rational actor. And, like, the fact that people are, like, dyeing their hair blue and yellow and, like, are going overseas and, like, listen to, is because people are getting, like, psyops by, like, the media they consume. The media, which, like, may have, like, a horse in this race. Like, maybe there are some interests that, like, want us to be over there bombing the fuck out of people. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's the same thing with everything. They, like, make you think that the other side of whatever issue it is, they're either, like, they're evil or they're deranged lunatics or something. They're never rational actors. They're never, like, rational, you know? Like, when you watch Game of Thrones, one of the nice things about Game of Thrones is that even the bad people in Game of Thrones, like, you empathize with them because you can generally see where they're coming from. Like, even Ramsay Bolton, as psychotic as he is, chopping off people's you-know-whats, like, you still, like, kind of get where he's coming from, but he's obviously, like, the least, you know, rational person in the show. But, like, everybody else, you kind of get it.
Right.
You kind of get it. And it's like a bit of a stand-in for the modern world and how geopolitics works. But, like,
I mean, probability that in the next 100 years there's some kind of nuclear weapon deployed, whether that's like the smallest of smallest tactical weapons or a big boy. What do you put that at?
I think you're missing, like, 2 zeros.
What do you mean?
The better question is probability of, like, 1 year. What happens?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like, human beings are so, like, you talked about the analogy of, like, writing naked put options, right?
Right. Or calls.
Humans are so bad at evaluating these sort of left tail, right tail, fringe possibilities. They don't factor into the decision making. In reality, if, like, we were sort of economically rational robots, the number one issue in this election cycle would be preventing nuclear annihilation via Russia through the war of Ukraine. Like, if you take the expected value of, like, the sea levels rise by a little bit, or, like, we tax, like, realized capital gains, maybe a guy shows his dick to somebody in the girl's bathroom, or the fucking world ends. Like, one of these outcomes is, like, way worse and by the way, probably irreversible, right? And it's not like 1,000 to 1 right now. It's not. Like, if you listen to that, like, Mearsheimer Sachs talk,
Ooh, that was great.
probabilities are, like, they're not even, like, sub 1%. They're, like, multiple digit percentages, maybe approaching 5-10%. That's insane. It should be everybody's, like, number one priority. Like, if I told you had a 10% chance of the entire world being lit up like a Christmas tree, that makes it sound, like, too optimistic. Like a fiery ball of hell Christmas tree that burns your entire house down and kills your family. Like, you would be like, what? Like, and that's what you would care about. You wouldn't be like, oh, God, Kamala's so brat, though. She's so brat. Like, no, you wouldn't say that. Because you'd be like, oh, wait, like, everything I've ever known and loved could, like, evaporate because why? Because why? Because...
Exactly. You can't even fill in the blank in your like, sarcastic argument.
And, like, the fact that... Like, to get back to Shapiro... When the fuck did we get to a point where, like, a Democratic politician is signing fucking artillery shells and everybody's applauding, and the Republican guy is like, what the hell happened? Like, this is, like, the biggest proof that people are they're just bots. They're just programmed bots. Like, all of these people applauding this, not all of them, but, like, so many of them were, like, they're very against, like, the Iraq war. Like, when a guy with, like, a red thing under his name did a war, it was very, very bad. But when blue people do wars, it's for justified purposes. No, it's not. Like, war sucks. War is stupid. War is bad. It's not good to blow up shit and then like have your personal friends come in and like rebuild things and like buy up all the fucking land and corporations. And they're the same guys who like funded all the bombs that like blew all the shit. Like, this stuff isn't good. Like, I thought like the people on the left like understood this concept, right? Like, and now like the Democratic Party now, you got like they're maybe committing like borderline genocide in the Middle East. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe that word is triggering, but they're killing a lot of fucking people, and a lot of people on the left don't like it. I know that, and we're doing war in Russia, and like, this stuff is fine now because Orange Man bad. Like, I don't get. Dick Cheney is endorsing your candidate.
Yeah.
What are you people doing? Just stand up and say no more.
I don't know. It's Trump's own fault. Like, every stump speech should be like, do you want lower taxes?
Okay, but it's not even Trump. It's not even a Trump thing. Like, if you talk to a lot of people on like the political left, they're like very much for the Ukraine war, even in isolation of Trump. Like, one of the things they don't like about Trump is that like he's like friendly to Russia. They're like a lot of people are like pro-war who like shouldn't be pro-war. And how did that happen? Like, what the hell happened?
I wonder like how future aliens will like anoint us the like Charles Darwin Award. You know, like, will they like place a little pin on the planet and be like, oh, this simulation failed. Yeah. It's a little frightening. It's not, we were laughing, but it's actually not funny because it'd be a really dumb way for all of us to die. And man, what's that? Is it that song War Machine? No, that's a UFC fighter that was based in San Diego.
The War Machine.
Yeah. What's that? What's that Ozzy Osbourne song? Talking about war.
War Pigs.
War Pigs. Yeah,
yeah, it's
like
a banger.
It's a great banger. But yeah, are we gonna see our fate decided by War Pigs? All right, we're an hour in and we've gotten through the quick hitters. So we can go straight to freak offs or incentives. You have incentives for 800.
Let's touch on Diddy real quick.
Touch on it. Okay. Sure. So let's see what happened with Diddy. Most people know, but this gentleman was arrested for racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, forced labor. Basically, they talked about he was basically running a criminal enterprise under his entities. Bad Boy Records. He also had a few other entities called Combs Enterprises and Combs Global. That should give it away already. Like,
Combs
what
Global.
idiot? Yeah, exactly. What?
Whenever you put global in your entity,
you're
just
fucked.
Shady ass
Yeah,
shit.
like, what kind of god complex do you have to be like, you know what? I'm gonna call it Combs Global. Anyway, that's laughable. Including kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction of justice. Basically, this guy purportedly used and leveraged actual physical harm, you know, career prospects, everything you could think of to force people into these freak-offs. And we don't know exactly what went on, but we do know a few things. He was found with 1,000 bottles of lube and baby oil.
Air quotes.
Air quotes. We can talk about that in a second. I think there's over 700 dildos found on premises, you know, as one does. And we also know that they were probably filmed, which I think is the most interesting part of this story.
Diddy is the Black Epstein.
He's a Black Epstein. Oh, man. Yeah, where do you want to go with this?
Dude, I don't know, man. Like, have you gone down this rabbit hole?
No, I told you
This
guys. I
rabbit
texted you guys. I said, "Do we have to talk about
It
this?"
is
And
so
yeah,
deep.
yeah, I don't really want to go into it.
I don't know how far down the rabbit hole we can actually go. Like, my main thing would be to tell people to just go down the rabbit hole.
No.
There's crazy shit down the rabbit hole.
There's more important stuff to think about.
Okay, so apparently the Diddy's like security guy is the same guy who found Michael Jackson dead. Sorry, air quotes. Found Michael Jackson dead.
Okay.
Definitely didn't.
Maybe his
murder him.
drug dealer.
Definitely didn't murder him. By the way, like one of the byproducts of this is like I've realized that like Michael Jackson was totally innocent. Like I don't think he actually diddled little boys.
What?
Yeah.
It's like a Kevin Spacey thing, like eventually acquitted.
No, I think he's like, dude, like there's a lot of parallels between Kanye. I don't even want to draw parallels with Kanye because Kanye that's gonna make him sound less compelling. But he did similar stuff to Kanye, where he was like, he kind of went came out against the Jews and stuff. There were people in the industry who objectively like very, very, very badly took advantage of him and stuff, and the industry itself was like kind of fucked up. And I think the going conspiracy theory at this point is that like, you know, they like, it's like what they did with the guy who shot Trump, his brother. Oh, they found child porn on his computer. Like Las Vegas shooter. Oh, they found child porn on his computer. Right? It's just like child porn and bomb threats. Like child porn on the computer and bomb threats.
What are you saying? This is like part of the tinfoil like playbook.
Yeah, like anytime you want to shut anybody up, you call in some bomb threats and you find child porn on their computer.
I don't know, like Michael Jackson,
yeah.
one of the most powerful people in the world during his prime, had no agency or choice over his decisions.
Okay.
I don't mean to trigger you.
I won't go too deep into it. But some people might know Ian Carroll. He makes some pretty good like conspiracy-ish TikTok videos, but they're like, pretty. Some of them are pretty well documented. He's always pointing at stuff in the background. He's got a record and he points at it, you know, in the TikTok way. I think his pinned post right now is actually like a why Michael Jackson was innocent thing, and some of the stuff that happened back in the day by like modern standards, you're like, oh, that wouldn't have flied. Like when there was just this coordinated hit with like the Wacko Jacko headline. Remember like Wacko Jacko, Wacko Jacko, Wacko Jacko, Wacko Jacko. It's like when everybody called JD Vance like weird.
Yeah.
And simultaneously everybody's using the same word. You're like, what's
Sharp
going on
as
here?
attack.
It's probably random. But yeah, everybody kind of like this. The coordinated media hit was like a lot easier.
All right,
to accomplish.
Well, bring me back to Diddy though. Are you saying he's like a Mossad asset?
It's like actually a good question. Like, what the hell is going on here? Because you've got Epstein and you've got Diddy, and like, there's like, okay, so like, if there's
they
some,
appeal
like,
to different cohorts.
Yo, there's some like J. Cole and Eminem rap lyrics where, like, people are rapping about this shit in like kind of like a, not like overt way, but like, yo, Diddy's raping people and all this stuff, and I don't know, man. The Bieber stuff is really.
Oh, there's gonna be some sick, disgusting stuff that comes out about Bieber and Usher, probably.
Yeah, Usher, Bieber, Aaron Carter, like to me, this is like, I mean, this is going way down the rabbit hole a little bit, but like, there's sort of like a where there's smoke, there's fire thing, right? Like, I think like 10 years ago, if you were just like, everybody in Hollywood's a fucking pedophile, man, they're just raping little kids, people would be like, okay, grandma, let's get you to bed. But like now it's like, yeah, maybe. Like, maybe.
I think there are a few interesting points to this. One, let's say you're like up and coming career person, maybe in the music industry or even in business. You get invited to a Diddy party and you see all this shit happening and you're like, you know, part of you could be like, oh, this is weird, I don't want to take part of this. Second part could be like, is this what just happens? And like, I'm like, my career is like escalating, and then now this is like, should this be part of my life? And I bet you those people are all texting each other like, fuck, what the fuck? You were at that party. Like, I was at that party. What do we do? Like, you know, was that on camera? What's going on? I also think it's interesting. The second part is, I wonder where those tapes are, or the footage, basically. The footage is the most important part of this whole story. We know that, like, Epstein had, you know, like, a recording area, and he kept backup files. And so who has it? It's not LeBron James doesn't have it. His manager doesn't have it. His PR person doesn't have it. You know, the FBI has it. And so if you're the FBI, if you're like just a good career FBI agent, and you have this footage, this like leverage.
What is that?
You're playing something on
Why is
everyone's
something
ears.
playing?
I don't know. Pause it.
I don't know what's playing.
Go back to that tab.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
Sorry. We're signing artillery shells.
Again.
I didn't even click an O on my phone, tap the play button on the laptop.
All right. Well, we're
Mystery solved.
moving on.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So you're a career. You're an ambitious FBI agent, and now you have all of these like celebrities or high-powered people. You can make them do whatever you want, and at one point you could expose all of them and like just bring them to justice immediately, or you could slow play it. You could be like, "Hey, LeBron, I just want to show you this."
I feel like you
Hypothetically.
I feel like you are thinking about this the wrong way. Because, like, my thought when Diddy got arrested was like, why did they arrest him? They didn't, I don't think they arrested him because they were like, oh my God, we found out he was doing all this shit. Like, they arrested him because somebody who's, like, way high up, who's probably sanctioning all of this, probably got, like, wind of it, and they were like, all right, take him out. Like, I think the FBI was like, we just discovered Diddy was doing... There's no fucking way they didn't know. It's just like the Epstein stuff, man.
To your point, when the video came out of him dragging his girlfriend, I think her name is Cassie, like by the hair in the hotel, just dragging her like by the elevator, kicking the shit out of her. Like, why wasn't he arrested that day? That day, that's all you need.
He was untouchable. He was untouchable until he wasn't. Flew too close to the sun, perhaps. Did something. I don't know.
All right.
Like, oh God. No, man, this shit is like crazy.
I think it's good to discuss, in this kind of context, but like actually in real life, I give zero fucks about this. Like,
I think you should give
why
fucks about it because it's like I feel like a lot of this podcast, like we're talking about waking up to the fact that we live in this like fantasy world where like we live in the like these pretend things happen, but in reality, there's like all these power structures like governing your life, like playing out in the background, and a lot of it, like we talk about, is like how to like subvert these things or like just bring awareness that they exist. Like stuff like Diddy is just another piece of evidence that there's some shit happening, right? Like there's some shit happening. Like
I don't know, but lucky for me, I'm in bed by 10 p.m. now. So like, I'm just never gonna encounter this shit.
You say this until like one day, it's at your doorstep, and you're like, oh God, how did I get here? Like everybody wants to ignore it until like they can't ignore it anymore. But there's very obviously some like weird stuff. It's like the Alex Jones like Bohemian Grove shit, Where you're just like, yeah, they just get you in a room and they make you do weird gay sex acts, so they have stuff on you. They put it on video, and then they're like, but it's like probably true. It's like what the gangs do, like make you kill somebody.
Yeah.
And they're like, we know you killed somebody. We got it on video, and it's like, apparently that's like maybe, allegedly, what's happening in Hollywood and shit. And again, you look at like look at the kids who are now adults coming out of Hollywood. Look at the Macaulay Culkins. Look at the Justin Biebers. Look at the Amanda Bynes and the Aaron Carters. And like, none of these people are okay. What do you think? They're all just like, oh yeah, fame was just like really hard. No, man, these people have obviously seen some shit. Like
received some shit.
They have seen some shit. Like, look at this is the last thing I will mention. Like, one of the craziest things for me was like watching the Justin Bieber music video for Yummy.
Okay.
Like, just go down that rabbit hole. Like, I'm not even gonna. Just go down the Justin Bieber Yummy rabbit hole. It's fucked up, man. There's like, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't know exactly what's happening here, but I'm not an idiot. I know some shit's
I don't know.
happening,
Could it just be as simple as like
no, it is not as simple as like
guy with
some
God
rapper wanted to
complex.
have some sex parties. No, it is not that simple.
A gay
This was
rapper.
sanctioned in some sort of way. It became unsanctioned. He doesn't have just like 1,000 bottles of lube. He's not like have like a lube fetish. Like, oh, look at my lube connect. Okay.
I think he does. I saw this one clip of Mike Tyson sitting next to Diddy, and like Diddy like kind of puts his hand near him, and Mike Tyson just like swats him away, like, get the fuck away from me. He knew that he was a freak and liked guys and didn't want him near him, and it made me think as simple as that. weird dude with a god complex that was in a very powerful business position and used his leverage over time. And, he hired people, realized he could hire people. I think his chief of staff, I don't know what her name is, but, she's either cooperating or going to come down as like the Ghislaine Maxwell version of this. And he had a lot of enablers, and I think he's proper fucked, and rightfully so.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure it's not some sort of government-sanctioned blackmail ring. The government would never do such a thing.
I mean, it is it in their incentive to do so, to have such a blackmail ring. But can we talk about incentives a little bit for the next topic?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good transition.
Thank you.
I forgot the next rant I was going to do.
Okay, good. Because we got to finish this thing on
Dude,
time.
Marty is just like on the edge of his seat right now.
All right.
It's like, this is the best episode ever.
All right. Should we get Marty in here? Let's see. All right. Marty lobbed me a comment that I think is fair. He said, signing shells is cringe, but pagers was cool. I think both are horrible.
I thought pagers is pretty horrible too.
I think
it's funnier in some ways, but it's also not funny.
I think it's one of the best clandestine operations ever to be pulled off. And, speaking, if you're thinking of yourself as like the protagonist is Israel in this situation, it is
yes, it
10 out of 10.
It hinges upon you having this kind of good versus evil worldview, which I think is mostly correct, but kind of muddy.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's all.
What else does Marty say? He says, I think Michael Jackson was innocent too. Been saying it forever. Mike just got bad advice and paid the first family off and then assumed he was guilty because he was weird. Mike was innocent. Lemon G says, MJ make Thriller. The man was innocent.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the best argument.
The best argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best. I see Matt in the chat as well. What's up, man? All right, why don't you pull up the first one, which is the Cobra effect, if you could.
Oh God, I forgot. We gotta. Okay, so this is in response to
Yeah. So
the first thing is the Elon tweet.
Yeah.
Right?
So Elon is going on
Okay,
about.
so he's talking about the homeless issue.
He talks about how the more that San Francisco funds the homeless issue, the more homeless you actually get. And he talks about these NGOs and third-party organizations which realize that, the more that homelessness stays around, the more money they get. And it makes kind of perfect sense. Like, if you're an organization and your revenue is based upon a homeless problem existing, and all you need to get more money, more revenue as a company is to propose more programs that kind of solve homelessness or like sound good, like they will solve homelessness, but don't actually. Their incentives are aligned, right? They're following their incentives.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to the tweet here, go back to Constantine's tweet. So he talks about
wrong tweet. Sorry. No,
that's
wait.
okay.
Still wrong tweet. Wait, I figured it out. Bam.
Okay. So he talks about the Cobra effect. And essentially in the Cobra effect, he found out that in colonial India, when India was under British rule, they wanted to get rid of the Cobra population. So they offered a bounty for these Cobras. And obviously what happened is that, people killed these Cobras and then turned them in for money and realized, well, wow, Cobras are really valuable, so we should breed Cobras. And so it increased the Cobra population because people found that it was towards their benefit to breed these Cobras and then kill them and turn them in. Okay, government caught wind of this, said, hey, we need to fix this. So they discontinued the bounty program. And now all of these bred Cobras, probably numbering in like the thousands, if not tens of thousands, are now worthless to these bounty hunters, and they release them in the wild. So we see the staged effect of...
Wow, we definitely didn't do anything like this with COVID, right?
No, not at all. And so you see the stage effect of government making a perverse incentive. And
That's good. It'd be really bad if we paid people to have COVID. That would be ridiculous.
So the problem gets worse, and then once the government tries to solve their initial problem, it gets even worse than that. So I thought it was a really good example of perverse incentives taking place. I like examples like this because I think it's
You love economic incentives.
I think I
It's
mean
your
like
aphrodisiac.
it kind of is. I kind of get turned on, like it puts me in a safe place where I kind of understand what's going to happen. I can kind of calm down and
Before bed. When
turn on some
Leslie's not around,
candles.
you turn on some Milton Friedman.
Yeah. Maybe not Milton Friedman, but his voice is kind of soothing. But yeah, I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense to me, in like a framework. So let's go on to the next part of this incentive. So speaking of incentives, Constantine proposes a. Can you make this bigger by any chance?
Probably, but apparently I don't know how Twitter works.
All right. Anyway.
Wait, I can zoom.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So he
Zoom
talks
and
about
enhance.
his my two-part most controversial opinion, and it involves incentives. Number one, politicians should be paid at least £1 million a year. Two, all financial impropriety, corruption, bribery, and so on by politicians should be subject to public caning on the first offense and death penalty on the second offense. So he's got like a two-part theory on incentives. One, pay them so much, like beyond top of industry, so that they have no reason to be corrupt or accept bribes or anything like that. And then make the penalty so harsh that they have no reason to be corrupt or accept bribes. So the first question is like, are you game for this? I think congressmen get paid like $174K a year. You cool with your favorite congressman or senator making $1 million a year?
Absolutely, if they get the death penalty for corruption. I think Constantine is being a little too generous. Like, I think if you opt into the I get paid £1 million a year paradigm, then I think you just go straight to the death penalty if you're corrupt. The problem is, like, we may have some framing going on.
Yeah.
Some political opponents. I don't know. So in a perfect world where framing doesn't exist and juries are perfect, then I'm okay going straight to death penalty.
Okay.
We probably should just go like life in prison, and I think the public caning should be suitable.
I like public
It'd be
caning.
hilarious to watch your favorite senator just get. Well, maybe hilarious is like a. No, maybe I shouldn't be making jokes. I don't know. I dehumanize politicians sometimes. I'm sorry. They're people too. But like some of these people are just. I don't know. Like, would I be upset to see Bobby Menendez from New Jersey like publicly caned? Probably not.
For cohorting with Egypt?
For how many things has that guy done?
I don't know.
Like 80?
All right, can we put up the Tony Blair clip? I want to play it.
That's a great question.
It's not a question.
Wait, nope, that's not it. That's AI Justin Trudeau.
I'm assuming your competency along with this. Okay.
I found it. Let's go, baby.
You need to play the audio and start it from the beginning.
All right, I'm at the beginning.
Play the audio. Oh, there we go.
He's talking about Singapore guy.
Oh, you broke.
I
You
broke?
the audio from the time I tested it.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
Is it because I? I know what I did.
multi-output device.
Let's try this, Nick.
Okay.
Let's see if I fix the audio.
Okay. Go ahead. Try.
And the third thing he did was he
I
said
am
there's going to be
so
no
smart.
corruption. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to make sure our political leaders are well paid, which the Singapore leaders are the best paid in the world by a factor of about 10 for the next person. And there's going to be zero tolerance of corruption. Zero tolerance of corruption. And those are the three decisions that were instrumental in building Singapore.
Okay.
All right.
So Lee Kuan Yew is famously known for turning, Singapore, kind of like a third world country, developing nation, into, a first world country known for its like technological advancements, its safety, its innovation, its economy growing for such a small population. And Tony Blair views Constantine's recommendations as one of the key things that he did to implement this. So I think it gives it further
So they
further
pay
weight.
Politicians a lot of money.
Yeah,
in
I
Singapore.
believe that the president, I think in the U.S. they get $400K, but I think the equivalent is like a couple $1 million. Minister positions are paid like high six figures, and their goal in that is to basically pay top of private industry. So they viewed private industry as like law firms, tech companies, you name it, that these positions should be paid at the top rate of those industries, and you would attract the best talent. You would kind of have this meritocratic system where you can funnel through the best people at the skill that you're hiring for and pay them top of market. And people would actually want those positions. I think their version of Congress is not paid as much of a premium compared to like our politicians, but when you're in the ruling party, you hold more than one position sometimes. So you might be a congressman, but you also might hold a ministerial position, and get 2 salaries. So regardless, Tony Blair is right. Like, the premium for a politician in Singapore is significantly higher than the U.S. They also do several different things. Like they try to separate the civil service aspect from the ruling party elected aspect, which we say we do. I think, as far as I know, like, people commonly call them the deep state, and then appointed electees. But for the most part, these 2 incentives could change the game. So, your game to pay your least favorite politician $800,000 a year.
Could you imagine, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene making $1 million a year?
Okay. Imagine. Okay, that saddens me. But imagine the competition she would face. Well, actually, do you think there would be competition?
You know how much plastic surgery Matt Gaetz would get? $1 million a year. Dude's eyebrows would be like. He would look like the fucking Cindy Lou from Whoville.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be amazing.
So you're open to this, but you want the.
All trollery aside, yeah, I think politicians should probably get paid more. I think that they objectively are paid too little and spend too much time raising money.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That is a large problem. I'd be curious how Singapore addresses that, because like in our current system, they get into Congress and they just sit at a phone and cold call people
You're right.
all day, right?
It's a smile and dial. You're a freshman congressman. Your job isn't to sit on a committee, or you're definitely not getting a chair.
About incentives. You're like, oh, why is everything so fucked up? I don't know.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you want your committee position? You want to be in power? Like, be a rainmaker. Bring in revenue. So the way Singapore does it is there's like a $2 or $3 cap per constituent for as much. That's a cap on how much money you can spend during your race. So there's like a cap on how much money can be spent in a campaign.
I like it's like a salary cap.
Yeah, it's like a salary
that.
cap or a spending cap.
Yeah, why should you be able to outspend somebody? Like yeah.
It kind of like sits right.
You just win Congress because you're the Yankees?
Yeah, or maybe your seat is so important to the balance of power that like everyone but your constituents is putting money into the campaign race.
Dude, like if that was the case where you only could spend X amount of dollars, like people, there'd be this new industry spawned of like political quants. Because like they'd be like, you can only spend $2 million in this district, but this district is worth like $20 million to the party. So we're going to take $2 million over here and pay this guy out of MIT to tell us exactly where to spend all of these dollars like as efficiently as possible, because we need to win the seat.
Yeah, I mean, I like this. So let's say we put a $2 cap on your constituents. That means like in a presidential race and spending like $2 billion, you could spend $650 million max. Doesn't matter how much you can raise. If you can raise $2 billion, doesn't matter. You can only spend that much. I think in the U.S. where it comes in a problem is like third-party spending. So let's say I just decide to spend $1 million on behalf of Kamala, just to like, I want to get out the word.
PACs?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I think it comes a little tough for the U.S. to measure and
are you
enforce.
a proponent of like publicly funded elections?
Yes.
What happens? So I'm not saying I'm against it, but does that mean that anybody who wants to run, they just get a budget? So then do you get like this kind of 2016 Republican Party clown car thing where like for every single election there's like 17 people on a stage?
Yes. Yeah.
And we just have
So
to deal
it's
with
kind of
that?
like in education they talk about backpack funding. Like every student comes with a dollar amount, and if your school attracts that student, that determines your allocation of public funding.
Wait, hold up. I think we can make this work because I see a win-win here. Because we imagine there are 64 crazy candidates who get public funding. Well, that makes a great bracket, doesn't it? So we get all these people like on a stage. Say we do just groups of 16. We do a Sweet 16. Name just came to my head, but I like the sound of it. So yeah, every week there's like 16 candidates, right? And then like people just ruthlessly vote off everybody but the top 4. And then like there's like a new round, and then they go at it. So like,
yeah, and let
DraftKings
let DraftKings and FanDuel get on this. Think about the civil engagement, all-time highs.
Oh my God! Like yeah, like the betting markets would make everybody so engaged. Like I've never been more engaged than like when I realized Polymarket had like I could bet that Trump would say the word like cat during a debate. You know, like, I've never seen freer money. So I could imagine this like playing out. No, this would be incredible. This like unironically, I think solves so many problems, because the problem is that you have to pay all of these people, like any crazy who wants to get in. But in reality, I think you just put them through a bracket, and then you have people just. It could be like American Idol. We could just vote right.
Yeah, we can combine like caps on campaign finance, and also ranked choice voting, all in one. It'd be amazing.
This is an amazing idea.
I know.
Why don't we do? Tell me one bad thing about this.
I mean, one is, again, you can't deliberate. You can't like pull the super PACs out of it, because of Citizens United. It's their free speech to spend whatever they want.
Okay, we do have to get rid of that.
Yeah, Supreme Court ruling. You're gonna need
as generally in favor as I am about most right-wing court decisions. I don't think that was a good one.
No,
I don't think that was objectively a good one. Seems to have had some
second and third order effects,
deleterious consequences. I mean, nobody predicted that would happen. Of course, you know, it's just like who would have thought. So yeah, we might have to fix that. But maybe we just get around to being like, okay, in the finals, in the finals, it's like a free for all. It's like UFC before all the rules, just like no holds barred, right?
Like,
then at least then we would actually. Even if the final round, like there's 2 people, like we actually do it like a bracket and there's just 2 candidates left at the end, I think this is actually an interesting alternative to ranked choice voting. The problem, obviously, is that like we do our voting, we have to go in person, and there's like a paper ballot, and I get why we do that, because, you know, fraud and stuff. So
I don't know. In the gambling markets, they figured out fraud. So I don't know. Maybe there's a way.
Yes, the markets could figure it out.
Yeah.
Yes, if we bet on it, the market will enforce the election.
And essentially, like when you have public funding, every taxpayer has a vote that they can bet, because essentially what you're doing is saying, I want my $250 of taxpayer money to go to this candidate. So that's essentially what you're doing. You're placing a bet on this candidate. That money then flows into their campaign fund, and they can use that however they see fit.
Engagement would be off the charts. Like in the very first round, where there's like just 16 of these jokers on stage, right? People would be like, nah, man. The guy with like one leg and the weird beard, he is a dark horse. I'm telling you, at like 20-1, like he's like, it would just be like the best horse race ever. You'd be watching it.
We'll just get like 17 derivatives of Ron Paul in that case, and like 3 Kim Kardashians.
But if they win, so be it. That's what the people want, right?
Yeah.
I would rather have Kim Kardashian be our nominee, but she like got there by like winning like a 4-round bracket and beating like 63 competitors out, and she's not like just some like part of like a political machine. I would way rather have that than the current situation.
All right. Well, here's my point of bringing this whole topic up. Is
what
that
were
like
we talking about again?
Perverse incentives.
Oh,
okay.
Singapore.
So yeah, Singapore. So every bill that goes through, it gets put to the Congressional Budget Office, and the CBO like basically puts out like, this will increase the deficit by this much, or it'll decrease it by this much. Why can't we have like a perverse incentives test? Like there's got to be like a simulation theory, or at least like 10 smart guys that could be like, hey, if we enact this bill, here are like the first order, second and third order perverse incentives that this bill will create. And, that should be like our smoke test of a bill. And can we bring up this third part of perverse incentives?
Is it the Argentina one?
Yeah, let's pull up the Argentina one. Okay, so on the screen, we have a Wall Street Journal article. This came out yesterday. Argentina scrapped its rent controls. Now the market is thriving. So I think I have this one on my phone, and I have some data for this one. Okay, so Argentina scrapped rent controls. Okay,
Like
so
all of them.
So you can no
Makes
longer
sense.
like cap rent
Given the
at a certain
position of the leader.
right. And not only do they do that, before you could only charge in Argentine pesos, but now you can charge in dollars.
Oh wow.
So like as a landlord, you can make sure that your rent has purchasing power. And so essentially by decreasing or getting rid of these rent controls, they incentivize supply. So they saw a supply increase. And by the way, this is in the last year. They saw a supply increase of 170%.
170% in housing?
Yeah, in housing
year?
in a year. Like, I was thinking,
Did
oh,
people
like,
just find like unused houses like
yes,
under the rug?
yes. So the stat
the
is
hell?
something like 200,000 properties were empty in Buenos Aires in 2022.
200,000 in Buenos Aires?
Yeah, and so what would
I like how
happen?
you did the accent there.
Buenos Aires. I feel like you got to make an effort.
Aires?
Aires. I think you had to make at least an effort if you can pronounce it.
I feel like I'm still not saying
It's
it right.
okay. You have
Like I
the
have
white
to,
thing
like,
going
roll it
for
a
you,
little
so you get a pass. So there was 200,000 empty buildings in Buenos Aires, and what would happen is these people just would not rent it out. They'd rather play like the vacation rental game for international visitors. The other thing it did was it created this black market. So you and I are friends, Steven, and I'm like, hey, listen, like I have this empty place. You could stay there, but like between you and I, like the rent's got to be like market rate outside of these rent controls because, let's be honest, like in 3 months, inflation's going to be 100%. I need to charge you something that I can actually pay my bills with.
People would pay over the price because supply was constricted and they couldn't get a place.
Yeah, so it created this like subversive black market. So basically, you had
Well, nobody's ever predicted that would happen.
yeah, but once it happened, all of these 200,000 unit landlords are like hurrying to get this thing on market, and so what you effectively had was a 40% decrease in real terms of rent prices. So in nominal terms,
40%.
in real terms. So in nominal terms, because inflation is so high in Argentina.
Well, you said like in real terms as though that's like a bad thing.
Well, no, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm just trying to explain it. Like,
so net of inflation.
like if someone looks up rent last October, let's say it was $100.
So inflation's still bad there.
Inflation's still a bad thing. Like in real terms, if you want to break even on that, like this October, the rent would be like $450. But in real terms, and when you factor the crazy amount of inflation that has been decreasing, but still, crazy high compared to America, 40% decrease. Now, it's not without its issues. Like, in the short run, you have people taking advantage of this, saying, hey, we're going to increase your rent every 2 months, and we're going to charge you in dollars, and it's going to go up every 2 or 3 months. So, like, in the short run, you have these landlords taking advantage of it. But
they're taking advantage in that their apartment is listed, like, way below market, I assume. And they're trying to get people out to get the thing to market.
Right, but then they're going to, once they're in, they probably likely know someone's not going to move within 2 months, but that they're going to increase the rent. And there's no rent increase caps anymore. So they can increase them equal to inflation, which
they don't have 12-month leases in Argentina?
No. There used to be a 3-year lease rule. So all those are gone. All those rules are gone.
People can't voluntarily
Landlords
sign.
can. Landlords can, yeah.
Okay.
But there will be my point is that there will be some misuse of this system, and that's what the critics will immediately attack.
Of
is
course,
like,
because you're gonna have these people who are like, they're in like a rent controlled like whenever you have price controls, like it's bad, it's net terrible for everybody overall. But like I used to have friends in San Francisco. These like rent controlled apartments. They get like handed down like through the back channels, and like they're in this like epic location, paying like $3,000 a month for like a 3-bedroom.
okay,
right?
you did the thing again.
I did not even.
You should close
click
that whole
anything.
tab.
Which tab?
The tab that has the microphone on it. Your third from the
don't-
left. Just kill that.
This
No,
one?
The one to the left of that.
This one?
No, two left.
This
Yeah,
one?
Kill that. All right,
All right.
we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And
Yes.
also, they have no incentive to make the place better. There's no incentive to go and like, I don't know, maybe put in a new kitchen.
Under rent control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is like Thomas Sowell has written about this a lot in. I forget if it's in Wealth, Poverty, and Politics or just it's in Disparities and Discriminations, because he has this whole. Like I feel like he's got like 4 chapters on rent control, because it's he thinks it's like the most hilariously bad thing ever, and he talks about how in New York, in Manhattan, like you had landlords who would just basically let their buildings collapse and like write it off because it was more profitable than to like maintain the place, because they were restricted from charging particular rents, and the only way they could make that rent back out was by to not fix anything. And then like people had to stay in the place because supply was constricted, because nobody wanted to build new supply because they couldn't. Like the fact that we don't have housing in some areas is like hilarious, because like this is like, we're not talking about splitting the atom, right? Like we understand why this happens. It's just like you have a 5-year-old and he writes 2 + 2 = 5, and you're just like, God, like, how did that happen? Like, I don't know. Like, why? Well, I guess we better just move on to the next problem. It's just like, no, like, we know why this happens.
Yeah, I mean,
Basic economics.
I just love that we have this case study, and that the positive effect has happened under 12 months, and that we haven't even seen the full capacity of the like economic progress it's going to create, because at some point landlords are going to realize they need to compete, and that in order to earn more, they're probably going to have to like provide better service, to their tenants. They're gonna have to like actually answer their calls when the toilet's broken, where before they had no incentive to fix the toilet or fix the roof or fix the leak, and now they do. And they actually have incentive to go in and like make these properties better, rehab them, and make them fancier, nicer, more modern. That employs every construction worker under the sun, and like you have this like, continuous like positive loop happening, and I just find it wonderful that we have it in front of us, and we're at a point where we get to vote, and you get to decide, which case study do you want to employ in your own city and in your own country.
I mean,
and
we
I
have
think-
rent control here, right?
Yeah,
It's like not super severe, but we have it.
yeah. I mean, basically, I think in California the rent control is something like you can only increase it 10% year over year. And in reality, like,
Which is a lot.
yeah, like I've talked to our general
Well, it
partners.
was a lot until a couple of years ago, and then people were like, I need 20%.
Right. I mean, I've talked to the general partners who manage the properties we've invested in California, and they're like, listen, in a good year, 3 to 6% is like extreme.
Yeah.
It's extreme. On an average year, 2%, 3% maybe. So they're like, listen, these rent controls exist, but they're not
But it,
disincentivizing
But
us.
it's like a foot in the door technique, don't you think? 'Cause
Totally.
Like they pass it, and they're like, well, and then people are like, oh, 10%, whatever. But then it's very easy for them to go in and be like, 8,
yeah.
6, 4. And then pretty soon it's 3, and inflation's
Yeah.
4%, and then
And then you'll end up
spiral.
what Argentina had before this, which was a limited supply of places to rent with extremely high prices. Because if you're locked
And
in for
shitty
3 years,
quality.
in shitty quality,
really bad quality.
you're locked in for 3 years, so you're going to forecast inflation, you're going to forecast your expenses and price that all in now. And so there was just no places to rent, and they were all the ones that were available were extremely high priced. So anyway, love this. Good job of incentives working in the positive for all mankind.
We love incentives. I mean, God.
It's one of those like fundamental rubrics or frameworks that you can apply to almost any situation that you encounter, it's like one of the best tools on your tool belt. You know, you can whip it out in any scenario and be like, I think I can figure this out, or at least assess the situation.
All right. So what do we have? One more topic left? Is there
Yeah.
one left?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that topic, or do you want to talk about incentives more?
Ooh.
'Cause,
Do
like,
you have somewhere
I
more to
got-
go?
Look. I'm just saying. Like, I think might be in our sweet spot here with like
Yeah.
the wonky
Yeah.
policy thing. Like,
Okay.
This next
Yeah.
one is like a little Armand, and he's not here.
Yeah, go on.
It's gonna be like so heady. I thought there was like an interesting. There's like an interesting kind of byline in the Singapore thing that like we didn't really talk about, which is just that like, what are the benefits and trade-offs of what Singapore is doing, and like, do you want to live in a society or even a city that makes those particular trade-offs, and is what they're doing something that we can replicate here? Like, why are our cities so much objectively shittier, especially in like, but I don't know, maybe they're just as bad in red states, but like we're in California, and
Right.
The cities are.
It's good to point out, like
terrible.
Singapore is such a small country. It's basically a city as well.
Yeah.
Singapore is kind of like a city and a country at the same
Yeah.
time.
So I feel like that model can be applied to cities. So is it like, what is the downside to the Singapore model? You get people being caned for chewing gum.
I mean, the biggest one is that it's high on the authoritarian scale,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes. But what does that mean exactly?
it means like a pretty large surveillance state.
Mhm.
Like if you were in your condo building and maybe you threw some trash out the balcony and it landed on the ground, like probably would get picked up by like a government surveillance, and you would be issued a ticket or a fine, or I don't know what the penalty is for that. But like that something like that would be caught. So I think that's the biggest downside, is that there is this harsh.
I think this is an interesting question, actually. Like, so we live in San Diego. I would say we're probably like the best run city in the state. Do you want to live in LA? I don't. Do you want
No.
to live in San Francisco?
No.
I don't. Do you want to live in Sacramento? I don't. But in spite of that, like, there's still there's still some shit going down, right? It's not ideal. Like, would you make that trade-off? Like, would you be okay going to jail for spitting gum on the sidewalk? Would you be okay being surveilled outside of your home? Like, if you could have this place be spotless, there's no crime, it's basically paradise, but if you commit a crime, you are getting severely punished, and there's like some surveillance. Like, are you making that trade-off?
I don't know. I guess it depends on the free speech aspect. For as much as we talk about, like, we're nervous about this free speech being this frog in a pot of boiling water, and then it's slowly eroding us, and it's hard to like understand how much it's happening in real time, but it's happening way faster than you think. That part is a little concerning. If I littered and the next day there's like, SWAT team showing up my door, I don't know. But you're saying the trade-off is that perfectly clean
Trade-off
streets.
is that this city is like Singapore.
I've never been. Have you been?
No, but like we've seen what it's like, and it's glorified. Although apparently, there's Singapore the nice part, and there's Singapore the not nice
I
part.
want to know if anyone in the chat knows Singapore the bad part.
Singapore, like the slums.
Yeah,
but
like what do they do with homeless?
I
there.
assume they just divided the city into haves and have-nots, and just push everybody into some pseudo like poverty / hybrid death camp outside the outskirts of the city. Because I don't know, do they have a welfare state there?
I don't know. I don't know that. You'd like to think that there's so much economic prosperity that like the problem is not that big of a problem.
I find this hard to believe.
I do as well. What I get excited about is that maybe I'm okay with these trade-offs, is that you could make such an impact in such a short period of time. Like usually when you think of like government action, you think of like, well, it's going to take time. It's going to take decades for this to happen.
This is a trade-off of like the centralization versus decentralization. Like I'm assuming Singapore is pretty centralized
Yeah, there's no
Go.
federal system where like, there's states and they have their states' rights and all that.
I don't know, like simple places like San Francisco, it's not like they're like getting like a okay, like it's not like the reason San Francisco is a shit show is because the federal government won't let them do stuff, right?
Right.
They're just doing things in San Francisco that they want to do that seem to be objectively bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this like difference between Singapore and say like somewhere like San Francisco, where in the U.S. you have checks and balances, and in Singapore they have like the government is centralized and like we say when things are good or bad. Like you could still keep some kind of decentralized nature while having these like really tough enforcement rules. Where
Right, like
where if the executive branch got out of fucking control,
Yeah.
Congress and the courts could come in and be like, nah,
Like it
Cool
seems like we could have Singapore, but we have free speech and guns still. And it seems like that would be like a good balance, right?
yeah, we should.
Oh, we can't keep the streets clean if you have free speech. Like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, oh, we can't keep the streets clean if you're allowed to have a gun. Like that doesn't make sense. Like that seems fine, right?
I'm asking what Singapore's tax rate is.
That's a good question.
Low.
Low.
So, anything above 320,000. This is Singaporean dollars, so I don't know the currency conversion, but 22%.
22%.
Yeah, and it's progressive. So like your first 20,000 is 0%. I think like if up to 120,000, it's 11.5%. And I'm pretty sure there's no idea of like federal and state. It's just all one. So the highest tax bracket is 22%. Corporate tax rate is 17%. So lower on all accounts than the U.S.
Okay. Pause 1 second.
Yeah.
Hoffy's asking for the address of the office.
Oh,
I
okay.
think you probably don't want to give that on the air, but
Yeah.
maybe you could text it to me.
Yeah, I will.
Or text him directly. That might be.
Yeah,
All right.
I got him.
Yeah, regarding the tax thing, it's kind of interesting. Like everybody's like, "Oh, we need more tax money. We need more tax money." But it's interesting to think what you could do just by like having laws that are enforced, right? Like, if you just have very severe punishments for things, like maybe you don't need to create all this additional bureaucracy to deal with like the downstream effects of this, and then like all
Yeah.
this money gets like lit on fire. Like maybe you can be like very efficient with the tax dollars if you were willing to give somebody the death penalty for like chewing gum.
One part
Which they don't literally do, right? But like they do.
yeah,
They do flog you.
like one part I don't know about Singaporean politics is like, is there this like two-party struggle, or is it has been this ruling party, the Lee Kuan Yew party for decades, and there's really not like a huge contesting party. Where in the U.S., like enforcement is probably very reasonably arguable that it's somewhat partisan, right? Like when you take over, the attorney general reports to the now ruling leader, the ruling party, and enforcement can be, swayed one way or the other. And so, if you could find a system in which, enforcement for these things we're talking about, like the corruption specifically, is somewhat independent, then yeah, I mean, and while you could say, oh, there's this separation of civil servants versus appointed politicians and appointed leaders, it always doesn't. It gets grayer, right? It's not like black and white in terms of the separation of the power of who gets enforced and who doesn't. And I don't know if that exists in Singaporean politics. Like they may just be blessed that like people have been happy for decades with this one party, and we trust them to like enforce the laws. But like I don't remember. Maybe there's been 2 instances in the last 4 years of a politician being like publicly flogged for corruption. There was the congressman who got elected and like lied about his resume, and then there was the Menendez guy who has had dealings with Egypt. But I feel like it's one of those situations where he got publicly flogged because he was so obvious he got caught. But you don't really hear about anything else. But just intuitively it's happening 20 times that rate.
Dude, this is such like a catch-22 of the punishments should fit the crime, right? Like, it would be really shitty. I'm being hyperbolic, but like if you got put to death for like walking into a CVS and like breaking open the display case and stealing 100 toothbrushes, I think most people would be like, "Wow, that seems like really horrifically wrong."
Well,
But also, like, if that was the thing, like, I'm willing to bet that 0 people a year would break into CVS's and steal toothbrushes unless they were like literally on like drugs.
well, all you have to do is like decrease the rate of actually prosecuting someone from $950 to $50. Because that's what goes on in San Francisco is that they don't actually
That's a
prosecute
microcosm
anyone.
of the Singapore thing. Like
Yeah.
Singapore, they're like, we'll fucking cane you if you spit gum on the sidewalk, right? And we're just like, we're like the it's like the like the Shiba Inu meme where like the Jack Shiba
Yeah.
and like Singapore is like, I'll cane you for chewing gum on the sidewalk, and we're like, shoplifting is okay as long as it's under $950, right? It's of course like people are gonna shoplift, like of course. So there's this like little tap dance you have to do between like being like kind of like a fascistic authoritarian hellscape and like having laws in like a society, right? But I feel like what's bad about a society is the laws that like punish like poor people, right? Because we have like parking tickets that are like $100 or something, and you don't make any money, or like you can't make it. You got to go to court, and if you have to like miss your job to go to court, and then you lose your job. Like that shit's like bad, right? But some of this stuff, it's just like if you are knowingly like littering in the middle of the street, and like a cop catches you and you get arrested and go to jail for a year, like I don't know if I care that much. Like, why are you doing that? Like we live in a fucking society. We live in a society. Like, there's certain stuff where it's just like, why would you ever do that? Like, why would you ever do these things? And if everybody just lived by these rules, like it would be a lot nicer around us, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, the real point you probably care about is that the fact that like if politicians were getting paid $1 million a year, you would just like maybe trust that they know what they're doing and that they have like the right incentives in place. Like
you would attract people from the private market.
Yes.
You'd outcompete the public market, and then your politicians would like imagine a world where like there's some alternate universe, right? There's infinite versions of this universe apparently, and I think in literally 3 of them, like our politicians are like more intelligent than the private class. But in that universe, like you can imagine people being like, "Oh, he's a politician. He must be like brilliant," right?
Right.
You could imagine that happening because you'd be like, "Oh yeah, they make the things that shape society, and of course we pay them a lot." And people are like, "Yes, of course we do that," and it makes perfect sense.
I mean,
things are good, especially if you throw them to the fucking wolves if they do anything underhanded. Like if you're making $1 million a year, I better not see a sniff of like impropriety on you.
Like I don't want to
Nothing.
see any call options being bought on like the company that your committee regulates.
Yeah, like I don't even care if you're not religious. You're in church every Sunday. You're saying Hail Mary like 15 times just in case. Like, no.
Because you want to keep your $1 million a year job.
Yeah, not that part. I actually don't care about that part. That was a joke. But like, but please don't take bribes. Don't take bribes.
You don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't have to.
So speaking of Menendez and bribes, like his bribes were not like
okay,
that
but
salacious. The
counterpoint
amounts
to this
weren't that
shit,
much.
These guys make a fuck ton of money when they leave office anyway. They
Okay.
still take all the bribes.
Exactly. So the incentive is that, okay, you maintain power for as long as you can. You don't make that much, and you make your bankroll when you get out, right? And then you peddle your influence and your connections and your relationships to get whatever agenda that is paying you. But like, what if we could pay them ahead of time and on the job, where that they may not get paid as much, like a lot of these politicians will go into obviously private industry, whether that's oil and gas or defense or name your industry, healthcare. They'll get put on a board where They don't have to do too much, but really they're just getting paid exorbitant amounts of money to peddle their influence. And what if they got paid more to stay in office than they would in that scenario?
Yeah, like what if that was the calling? Like what if
That was Valhalla.
what if the highest calling in society was to be a politician? Be kind of crazy. But it makes sense. Like the highest calling is for you to govern and shape the society that we all live in. That would be kind of good, right? That'd be kind of good.
Yeah, I'm curious in the chat, like if there was this job for $1 million a year, that you're going to be under public scrutiny. People are going to say bad things about you. In fact, 50% of people are guaranteed to say bad things about you. Would you enter that gauntlet? Like, would we be incentivizing supply of, people who are good at their job?
There wouldn't be shit talking though as much though, because I feel like it would become more of a meritocracy. Like if we were paying more for it.
I don't believe that the divisiveness would decrease, but I certainly believe that you'd have genuinely better people.
That actually is an interesting question, because there's a difference between you buying stuff because the price is the lowest for the best product versus your voting.
Yeah.
So it might be worse in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's like immediately obvious that like the earning potential of being like a senator on a committee is not like what you get paid for being a senator on a committee. It's like the future influence and power that you hold.
Yeah.
All right.
I personally am down to run an experiment where, look, I think if we can still maintain like the federalist system and states can do their own things and everything, but we can bring this to the city level. Like, I'm all for like running some states as like a semi-fascistic like autocracy where there's still free speech and guns, and then just move to another city if it's. I want to run this experiment. I want to have like San Francisco and like U.S. Singapore and everything in between, and I want to see what happens. Like, I feel like if we did that, I feel like my gut instinct is like people would gravitate towards rural areas to have like the freedoms, and I think people would opt in to surveillance and all of these things that we think are kind of like icky, because I think people would want to live in like a clean, well-run place with no crime. I think people would take that trade-off. The problem becomes when it is like countrywide and you can't escape it, and then you don't have free speech, and then you don't have the right to bear arms, and there's no check on the government whatsoever.
Right.
But if you just set it up so that people can vote with their feet and move and bankrupt the city, if it's not, like, I think it's fine. I think it's a good system.
I'm in. I want to run a split test.
Let's do it. Someday when we run the world.
Yeah, but we're not incentivized to. Salary's too low.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Well, I had a lot of fun with you today.
Yeah,
I think it was a good episode, actually. I enjoyed this a lot. The camera angles were great.
Oh yeah, the camera angles.
Yeah.
I think. Oh yeah, let me sit up straight here.
A lot easier.
Not bad.
A lot easier with the two people, huh?
Yeah.
Almost looks like a professional podcast.
Almost.
Almost.
All right. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. It helped that we worked on this bottle of whiskey together as two instead of as four. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Give us feedback. It's the first time Steven and I are doing a solo podcast together. So, throw in the comments. Give us your arguments. Give us your hot takes against us, preferably. And then we'll welcome back the whole crew next week. So if you haven't already, like the video. It helps us grow the channel. And like I mentioned last week, I know a lot of you who watch aren't subscribed. It's free to subscribe.
Click the button, man.
It's free to subscribe. So do us a favor. It helps us out a lot. And otherwise, we will see you next week, guys. I think, right? Yeah. There's no travel plans.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I mean, if I do have them, I don't remember.
No, we're good. We're good. All right, guys. We love you lots. We'll see you next week.
All right, love you.
See you later.
Later.
Bye.